All right, guys. Welcome to another post-game reaction of Fish and Grits, the podcast version of the Atlanta Falcons post-game reaction. Today, we're going to be reacting to yet another loss. Um, the Falcons came out and probably put out, all things considered, health being a factor, their worst game of the season. Um, we are now 0-5 in a season that many expected us to, if we were going to compete in the first half of the season. And we have fallen on our face in every single game. We look like a team that is lost, that has had their soul ripped out of their body, Shang Tsung style. Uh, we look defeated. When the first thing goes wrong in a game, we look defeated. This team has no spirit, it has no backbone, and that can only relate to one thing and one thing only. The team is lost. Dan Quinn has officially lost the Atlanta Falcons. Micah, tell me what you saw.
Um, I saw mostly what you saw. The only thing I can say is I see a few people still want to fight. There's a couple guys on defense who still are out there playing hard. They're just they just can't get anything done.
Give me some names.
For instance, we got a few like Charles Harris. When he was in, you see he's running all over. Foyer is everywhere. It's a few guys. It's a few guys. Gurley looks great. I mean, it really, to be honest with you, Gurley, Hill, and Ito all looked good from the reps they got, but the game got out of hand, and you get to a point where you can't use them anymore. We get back to this point though, and it's like, the defense is trying. Defense isn't that great, but they're trying to keep us in games. The problem is it's essentially like a pitcher with no offensive staff, with no in baseball. I mean, they're fighting to hold teams under 20 something points to give the offense a shot to just win. And the offense lately, for the past since the second half of the Bears game, it's just anemic. It is terrible. Outside of the few decent runs we've gotten from Gurley and Smith and stuff, it's really been bad. Matt's looked horrible, and he has yet what's been 34 consecutive drives with no touchdown pass, I believe.
Well, when you said it earlier in the game, it was at 27. So it has to be more than that now.
Well, did we have more than seven possessions in the second half?
We can find out right now, actually, instead of guessing. Let's take a look and see what we were working with here. So
because how did we score? How did we score? We got 2 field goals in the second half, and then what else?
I'm looking right now. All plays. So what are we looking at here? Second quarter. Why is the second half not popping up? Oh, here we go. All right. So that was the interception. This is all jacked up. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 possessions in the second half.
5. Okay, so it's what, 30? So 32 consecutive possessions where Matt hasn't thrown a touchdown.
That's pathetic.
And you know, I'm in quite a few, you know, Falcons groups on Facebook and so on and so forth. And there's so many folks who love to defend Matt Ryan, but at this point you can't defend him. He is playing terrible. And, you know, and for him to be one of the leaders of the team, I mean, what hopes do we have? What hopes do we have to win anything when he's playing the way he's played the past few games? I mean, you know, it's kind of grim. Yeah, I mean, that's really all I can say.
You can't have a team that is so deficient in coaching and have your most important position playing like Matt Ryan is playing right now. Yeah. There's a lot of teams like Deshaun Watson. We always like to compare our situation to the Texans. Deshaun Watson is so talented and still so creative on offense that he can outplay bad play calls. He can outplay deficiencies on the offensive line. He can outplay a lot of those things because he can create a lot of offense for that team with his legs or just his arm talent. Matt Ryan is at the point in his career where he can't do that anymore. And he's been so rattled by the last couple of years that his internal clock goes off a lot earlier than it should. And he gets real shaken at the slightest sense of pressure coming in there. If you rewind a couple games back to the Bears game where Nick Foles took one on the chin and still threw a dot for them and scored a touchdown, that's not something you've seen Matt Ryan do in quite some time. You have not seen Matt Ryan sit in the pocket and really take a hit and still deliver a pass. It doesn't seem like he's physically unable to do it or B, unwilling to do it now. I don't think that this current composition of the team, and I'm talking about all levels, players and coaching, are fixable at this point. From what you're showing on the field, it is unfixable. You may run into a couple teams down the line here in the next couple of games that are pretty bad, and you might sneak one out just on sheer talent, but you're not winning anything past 6 games with this team.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked if we won 4.
Yeah.
With our current schedule, we've got, let's pull it up here. After I had it up, I don't know when. I'll pull it right up now. All right, so next week we go to Minnesota. Then we've got Detroit, Carolina again in Carolina, and then Denver. So that's the weakest part of our schedule. We may get lucky to get 1 or 2 out of those. But if we play like we played today, and any of those teams play like they have been playing recently, we're going to go into the break 0-8. You can't convince me otherwise. And at the beginning of the season, I was one of the more optimistic amongst our group. I had a lot of faith in what this talent could do because this team is talented. Don't get me wrong. There is talent on the Atlanta Falcons roster. You don't trot out, like they kept saying in the game, 15 first-round picks. And now some of those guys haven't panned out to be what they were supposed to be. They haven't panned out to be these great players, but a lot of them have. And some of them are still talented enough to compete in the NFL. That's why they're still in the NFL. And like James Carpenter, this is like his 8th season. He's not a great left tackle like people thought he was going to be coming out of Alabama, but he's good enough to at least be in the NFL. And he's good enough to at least keep a starting job on whatever team he's on. I mean, he beat out Matt Hennessy. I mean, that was a guy that a lot of people coming out of college thought Matt Hennessy was a surefire starter on a lot of teams in the NFL because he's just because of his talent. And Carpenter beat him out. Fair and square. So you don't have that much talent on the team and look like this unless there is one thing deficient. And I think it's, at this point, the entire coaching staff. Dan Quinn is obviously the figurehead of the coaching staff. And at this point, he doesn't really do much more than have game plan installs, but he's not the one calling the plays on the defense. He's not the one calling the plays on the offense. And everybody knows how much we hate Dirk Cutter on this show.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not the one in the team meetings. He's not the one telling Isaiah Oliver, hey, get your head around. Hey, stop shooting both hands on a press. Hey, get your hips cocked this way. He's not that guy. And now he may say it on the practice field sometimes, but that is not his responsibility. He is no more than a figurehead. And he is a figurehead of the losing culture that he's created here in Atlanta. But he's not the only problem. Dirk Cutter is a huge problem for the offense. But like I was talking to our guys earlier, Matt Ryan is a huge problem on this team right now with the way he is currently playing.
Yeah.
Micah has always been the guy that has been a lot harder on Matt Ryan than the rest of us. And for those of you watching on YouTube, there's typically 4 of us. But I am a Matt Ryan supporter. I've always been a realist when it comes to Matt Ryan, and I've always known that he's never going to be a guy that's going to sling it 60 yards down the field like an Aaron Rodgers or a Stafford or a Pat Mahomes. But his arm strength has always been good enough to compete in this league, and it's always been enough to do what he's good at. And at this point, I don't know if it's the fact that he didn't get his typical offseason workout in, he hasn't lifted enough weights, or if it's just the fact that Matt Ryan is 36 and he's never been a strong arm quarterback. So you're not going to win many games with a quarterback that looks like that has a problem with pressure, that has a problem with arm strength, and has a problem with happy feet. On that throw to Hayden Hurst was wide open. Matt Ryan got so frantic in the pocket and rushed that throw so badly that he sailed it because he didn't set his feet. And this is a problem that you're seeing a lot. You saw it a lot in this game. And again in this game, you saw Matt Ryan come up short on a short throw and skipped it. And that's not setting your feet and a weak arm.
Can I say it better?
I mean, we don't have a bad offensive line, but they're certainly not good. I mean, that Panthers front seven, again, is a talented front seven if you just look at what, a lot of these guys did in college and what they're supposed to do in the NFL. Now, if you're anybody that's coming into the NFL nowadays and you have a modicum of talent and you have a level that you're supposed to play to, if you're playing the Atlanta Falcons, you're more than likely going to meet that level, is what it looks like recently. Whether it's Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback, looking like a young, I don't want to say Drew Brees, but man, he looked really good out there. He looked like a discount. No, I'm not going to say it. He looked like what Teddy Bridgewater was supposed to be when he came into the NFL. He had some mobility. He was good with decision making. His arm was decent enough. And he was just a good football player. And that's what he looked like in this game. Mike Davis, another guy coming out of South Carolina, was supposed to be a really good running back. And he's done okay things for them filling in for Christian McCaffrey. But Mike Davis was a guy, when he went to Seattle, people were like, oh, this could be a problem. And he never really panned out. But guess what? When he played us in Seattle, he looked good. And when he played us again here in Carolina, he looked good. Mike Davis looked like, they said Barry Sanders, but he looked like a young AP just running through tackles. It's at all levels, guys. And I don't know what else to say other than you got to get rid of Dan Quinn. Unless your plan this year is to just really suck and we're going to tank and we're going to get a good draft pick. And at this point, that's probably your best bet. Wouldn't you say, Micah?
Probably. With a new coach, get a new coach and give him a great draft pick to pick his own guy.
But what I was wrestling with during watching the game, do you want to stick it out with Dan Quinn and let us suck, or risk another second half Dan Quinn turnaround where we finish 7-9 and we wind up 12-15, 16 in the draft order, and you get a good guy, but you're not like going to get a guy who's going to change your organization at that position, whatever you pick. Do you do that? Do you risk the Dan Quinn flip flop? Do you fire Dan Quinn and see what you got on your current coaching staff and let them decide? Because if you fire Dan Quinn, in my opinion, you have to get rid of Dirk Cutter. That man is so tied to him, and the offenses look so bad underneath him that there's no way that you can just tell me Dan Quinn is the only problem. So you either have to get rid of both of them, see what you got on the current roster, and let the team play out with some familiarity, and not risk bringing a new guy. Do you try and bring in a guy early and let him look at the team? Don't give him any coaching responsibilities, but make your decision on a coach and let him oversee the football team so he can start looking at talent and saying, you know what, this guy's going to fit my system. This guy isn't going to fit my system. And so he can start working out a plan with Dimitroff, which I don't think Dimitroff is part of the problem. Dimitroff is too good at cap management and too good with what he does moving money around. I know you have your differences with him, Micah, but you can't argue the fact that he's a wizard when it comes to the cap stuff. And ultimately, he is just a puppet for whatever coach and their scheme wants, which is a good thing. You don't want the guys clashing. Or to play devil's advocate to myself, you're not going to get that GM like Ozzie Newsome, who's going to say, we're getting these type of guys because they fit my type of style. So what would you want to do, Micah, as far as coaching goes? How would you approach this?
Personally, I mean, I think at this point, just let Quinn finish the season. I think what you said earlier what you alluded to earlier about it's the entire coaching staff and not just Dan Quinn. I think that's the point. And I think Arthur Blank sees that it's all of those guys. And I think what he doesn't want to do is fire Dan Quinn, give somebody else a chance, and potentially let them and they potentially like kind of get the team back motivated and they make a little run, but we don't make the playoffs. I think ultimately I think he's really like ready now to just kind of let them all dig their own graves. And so when this season's over, all right, you're all gone, get a new head coach, new GM, and just start from scratch and just be like, all right, you pick your players, like whatever. Now the only thing and the only downside is a new head coach is they're still tied to a few of our players. Now, granted, I think any coach would love to have Grady. Mm-hmm. Grady's a monster. Fowler for next couple of years, I think coaches wouldn't be upset about that.
As a number 2 rushing end.
But some of our offensive pieces. Now, I mean, I think every coach would love to have Julio, but Matt Ryan at this point in his career, as much money as we have tied into him right now, and like I've seen some people on the fence on trade him. The ones. Well,
it would have to be a restructured contract to even consider trading him.
Exactly, because I mean, I think it's something like $75 million worth of dead cap if we tried to trade him.
Yeah, because we're about halfway through on his $150 million deal.
Yeah, so there is no moving on from him right now. So the only real option you have is to potentially get a new coach in there, suck real bad, draft like maybe a Trevor Lawrence or Fields or even Trey Lance, and set them behind Matt Ryan for another year or so, at least until you can release them and eat the cap hit, and develop them that way. Because where we are right now is we're stagnant. We have talent, but it's not enough to do anything right now. Because I mean, and it's word. There's a few words that the commentator said in that game I think it was Brock Heward, mm-hmm. Said that are sticking in my head. And at one point in that game, we were running the ball so well, they were putting 8 in the box, and Matt wouldn't check to a pass play. It's like you got the matchups on the outside, check out. Like, but he's so like, oh, well, coach called this play. This is what I'm gonna run, and it's like, no. Sometimes it's okay when you see it. Check, get out of it. And I don't think any coach, especially if it works, no coach is gonna be pissed at you for that. I mean, it's just, it's this team right now is frustrating. Like I said, I said earlier, I hate to watch bad football.
Man, you're watching a lot of it here lately.
Yeah, and the sad thing is, like I said, and a lot of the Matt Ryan supporters or apologists or whatever, they love to put it on the defense. But what has our offense done to help them out? Our defense has always been our weaker unit. Now in the past, you could say, oh, the offense is putting up points, the defense just isn't doing their job. Well, this year, the offense isn't putting up any points. The defense is trying to is doing what they can, and they're giving up points, which is no surprise. But when the offense is 3 and out, you might get 6 plays, you might get 1 first down, go 6 and out. But it's like, yo, you are relying on, you're basically asking this defense to keep you in games long enough for your offense to figure out something to potentially get going. And like, here's the Cutter is bad, but a lot of what I saw today wasn't just on Cutter and his play calling. There were a few decent calls at the right time, and it was just poor execution. Matt made some bad throws, like the one Ridley dropped where he's crossing the middle and Matt throws it behind him. He doesn't set his feet and throws it behind him. And it's like, yeah, I get it. It hit his hands. You're supposed to catch that, but that is a very hard catch to make.
That's a jumping pirouette behind you in traffic catch at that point, instead of a catch and stride and keep on running.
And now I know Gage missed one early that was easy, and you got to capitalize on that. But that's the thing. It's just as much a lack of execution as it is bad play calling and stuff like that. It's just when it doesn't work, it's easy to blame the coordinator when a play doesn't work, when sometimes it's like it should have worked, but it should have worked. We just didn't execute it. Well, I mean, perfect example on defense. I like Raheem Morris, but he came out early, was real aggressive, did a cover 0 blitz, and you had Oliver one-on-one matched up with DJ Moore, their best receiver, who is 0.3 of a second faster than Oliver in the 40. And
probably worlds different in the 3-cone drill. He's
oh yeah. He ran that speed out. He ran that speed out on Oliver, got his separation, and then it was off to the races. And it's like, dude, if you see that matchup, you got to check. You got to at least have one safety deep. You got to have somebody to help on that matchup, because he's not going to be able to guard him in space. And it's things like that. It's small things like that kill us, shoot ourselves in the foot.
So if you're repeatedly seeing a team that's not executing correctly, that some of that goes on the players, but ultimately, if a team is failing in execution, to me, that often points back to the coaching. The coaching, X's and O's is the coaching job, and the adjustment part is the coaching job. And typically, executing the plan is on the players. But if you're consistently failing in the same ways, I mean, that's either you're talent deficient, which the Falcons are not, or something is wrong from coaching to the players. Either the translation is wrong, The teaching is wrong. The scheme is wrong. And that's one thing often when watching a lot of these other teams. Like, let's go back to last week when watching Matt LaFleur call the same scheme that we're in. And Aaron Rodgers didn't beat us downfield in that game. Aaron Rodgers has a much stronger arm than Matt Ryan. But in that game where they were down their top two receivers, they beat us on short and intermediate passes consistently. And the way they did that is by scheming those guys open. And you don't see that same type of game plan from Dirk Cutter. He is, even though he's in the Shanahan playbook, even though he's in a West Coast playbook, how many times do you see those routes? And, this just for the people like the casual watchers, go beyond the camera on the TV. You're going to be on the camera. You're going to be on 10, 15 yards, pretty much is what you're seeing. And we know that's not Matt Ryan's strength anymore. And we know we don't have these quality checkdowns. You don't have these. And when I say levels, I don't mean like a levels concept type of play, but you don't have levels of the play. Typically, everything is all at one depth or really deep. And you don't see that in the Atlanta Falcons playbook right now. It's there. We know it's there because we saw it with Sarkisian and we saw it with Shanahan. We know it's there. It's just not being called.
Yeah.
You're not playing to your strengths.
I mean, I agree. I think as far as like Cutter goes, I think though it's to me it's like Cutter calling Shanahan's playbook is kind of like a math teacher trying to teach science.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's essentially I think this way, but you want me to use this and try to teach this. And it's like he doesn't grasp the concepts of Shanahan's playbook. His mind is set on a different style of offensive scheme. He's more of a vertical style offensive scheme, which I mean is fine, but at the same time, he can't think with the complexity that someone who legitimately came up with that scheme, whether it's right. LaFleur, McVay, Kyle Shanahan, guys like that who legitimately have spent years learning that scheme inside and out. He doesn't get the complexity and how you can fully utilize that to your advantage. He just out there winging it and calling plays because he's essentially a casual Madden player in a calling plays. I mean that's it is what it is. Now, you said something though as far as like what you were talking about execution though. Mm-hmm. I think defensively though, I think it's partially coaching, but then I also think the defensive guys know how bad the offense is struggling, and I think they're trying too hard to make plays, and then they wind up because I don't know how many times Mike Davis got extra yards because we're trying to strip the ball instead of just trying to tackle him, and I get it. It's that you're like, oh, we got to get the ball back for the offense. We got to get the offense another shot, and it's like so it's bad when your defense, who's not great in the first place, is doing everything they can to try to get you the ball to get you going. And like I think that the touchdown to DJ Moore, where Oliver was covering him, the commentator called it. Oliver jumped on the slant. Mm-hmm. He jumped all over that slant route. So when DJ Moore hit the spin and went out, he was just like, oh, crap.
And he doesn't have the makeup speed to keep up with DJ Moore.
Exactly. And so it was like he ultimately tried to make a play, but he made the wrong decision and got burnt. He took a gamble and got burned. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't necessarily be mad at that. granted, it looks terrible, but the fact is, I can see that the defensive guys want to make plays. Some of them just don't have the talent to, and the offensive guys have the talent to make plays. We just don't. That's what it ultimately comes down to.
And the bad thing is we're at
Well,
such
in my
a point.
eyes, at least.
Yeah. We're at a point in this build of the Atlanta Falcons where, you know, we don't have the young backups to throw in there and be like, oh, let's see what they got. We got Matt Schaub. For whatever reason, we've kept Matt Schaub for the third year in a row. We don't have a young guy that we can throw in there and say, you know what, hey, Matt's not doing it right now. Let's see what you got, man. Let's see if you know, this is the changing of the guard. Let's see if this is the Aaron Rodgers, the Brady, I don't know who supplanted. When did Dak? Dak was just a draft pick, and they pretty much knew he was going to be a starter, right, Micah? I think Micah cut out on us, or I cut out.